So, hello. This is our podcast on one of the biggest games out at the moment. Burnout Paradise on the Switch. Like 10-year-old game. And of course, it's about The Last of Us 2. We've both been playing... Well, I haven't introduced you yet.
You have.
Introduce yourself, Dashby.
My name is Daniel Ashby, and I will be contributing on The Last of Us commentary.
Combining those names, you get Dashby. Which is probably what I'll refer to throughout this.
That's fun.
Just easier. So yes, we both a little bit of background on our PS4 escapades.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that CEX were going to buy some old PS4s for quite a lot of money. Told you about it, and you were like, "I'm going to get one too." Yeah. And then we both went for The Last of Us 2 PS4 Pro Edition. Very alluring looking console, I must admit.
Yes.
Yeah. And now we both have it, and we're both playing it at, weirdly enough, the exact same pace.
Yeah, today,
it's kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
So in this podcast, there will be spoilers a bit later on. We are both roughly 6 to 7 hours in. I'd probably say closer to maybe even go into 8 at this point.
Yeah, I'd say that.
So if you're not past the 8-hour mark, you might want to walk away. But other than that, we'll get started. So where do you want to start with first? Do you want to talk gameplay first? Do you want to talk overall impressions? What do you want to talk about first?
I guess the logical place to start would be overall impressions. Yeah.
So I would say very impressed so far. I'm very much having the same experience I did with the first one. It doesn't feel... It definitely feels like a sequel, but it's very much like nothing really needed to change from the first one, bar a couple of things. And then the story just needs to continue. And when the first one ended, and I was like, you could end it there. That'd be enough. And they announced the second one, and I was like, okay, what kind of story can you do? But just a couple of hours in, like straight away, completely changed my opinion on that. Made it that, yes, this is a story that needs to happen, and it's very good to have a sequel with. Just generally, it's a complete overall... Everything is improved over the first one. And the story, I would say, is even more gripping than the first, because you've got more... what's the word I'm looking for? You've got
investment.
Investment, that's the word. More investment into the story. So it's good to continue that and see where it's all going to go from there. What makes sense?
No, I'd agree with all of that. I mean, I was like you in a way. I mean, I was always going to be excited for a second Last of Us because the first game just blew me out of the water. But at the same time, it's such a unique game. It's not like the Uncharted series where you can kind of just keep making them and you don't really have to differ. You know, they're the set beats. You can go, treasure hunter, blah blah blah. This is something else. And I think when it came out, like nothing else had happened, and it was like, well, how can you really top that? But yeah, it's the same again. I think a few hours in, it was like, whoa, okay, this is not only matched the expectations but exceeded them. I think they kept. What's nice about it is they kept all the things that worked so well about the first game, but have now introduced new things.
Yeah,
and Naughty Dog as a company are really interesting because with all of their games, they kind of start bringing in new styles, but it's not it's not a complete overhaul. Like in an Uncharted 4, they started bringing in the sneaking from Last of Us.
And the more open world
the narrative kind of gravitas.
It's a benefit getting Neil Druckmann on board, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, the guy really knows story, doesn't he? But yeah, so I think it's just a brilliant game so far, and it's ticking all the right boxes, and kind of giving you what you want, giving gamers what they want from the first game, and I think offering them a little bit more kind of things that they wouldn't expect. So
yeah, definitely. Like I think, to be honest, anything Naughty Dog does, they're just kind of one of those companies that you need to get excited when their games get announced and when their games are coming up, because they make amazing games. Kind of like the same with like the Zelda franchise, or with what other big companies are there? Kind of like not personally for me, but when there's like a new Final Fantasy game, people just go nuts for it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those companies that you know it's going to be good simply because they're involved with it, and that's why. Yeah, even if it wasn't The Last of Us 2, if it was something else, I would have still been excited to get it. But yeah, taking what they built with the first one and taking it into the second one in terms of everything, it just makes it incredible. I mean, I was concerned when they announced that you wouldn't play as Joel throughout the game, you would only play as Ellie. Because although I did think Ellie was an interesting character, personally Joel's one of my favourite characters that I've sort of experienced in a video game. Because he's not your average, like he's not like Nathan Drake. He's not like cocky and actiony and everything. He's just fucking desperate and like haymaker punches and all this stuff. He makes it up as he goes along. That's what I love. That's what I love about him, sort of thing. So when they announced it would just be Ellie, I was like, really? I still want to play as Joel. But again, within the first few hours of playing that game, they made Ellie into the character that I wanted her to be, and that she's kind of fucking crazy in like a really good way. And as everyone knows, even before we do go into spoiler stuff, the game has always been about revenge and everything. And that theme is very heavily played on in the game and works really well.
Definitely.
But I suppose let's move on to gameplay next. So how do you think the gameplay's evolved since the first one?
Well, it's interesting because obviously, like you said, you're playing as Ellie for the majority of it. So her fighting style is different, and there are kind of similarities, but it's very interesting how they've approached it. And agility comes into it a lot more, which I really like. And there's kind of the whole map design and the levels, the environments, you can really utilise to get the better of your opponents. I kind of just the first few encounters I had, you could kind of squeeze through gaps, and just adding the ability to go completely prone, so you're like flattened on the ground, really helps. And yeah, it's really kind of refreshing gameplay. Because the finishes are still really brutal and quite graphic, like the first game. I'd say even more so in places. But then around that, they've kind of introduced new techniques, and I think that's really good because when they're keeping the kind of you've got the heaviness, so the hits feel proper. You feel that Joel had, like you said, with the haymaking. But at the same time, it's like the way she moves around is different enough to bring something new and different. And, and it feels very smooth as well. You can get out of situations. I mean, it's not easy by any means.
No.
It's if anything, it's harder. But there's more kind of room for, okay, how can I get out of this situation? Oh, I can go over here. I can squeeze through this gap. I can flank them this way, and that sort of thing.
I've been finding the same thing as well. Like when it comes down to the new features, I mean, in combat, pretty much the main new features are, like you said, the going prone. You've also got the dodge button.
Oh, yes.
And the dodge button, you kind of forget about it sometimes when you're getting attacked, because in the first one, you just had to keep punching your way back.
Yeah.
But in this one, because you can kind of dodge and kind of get a better position to fight the enemies, is really good. And like you're saying about like how gruesome the kills and stuff can be. Because Ellie's got a knife now, there's scenes where she'll just like stab them in the gut and then rip it out, or like stab it in their gut and then like slide it across. And when you stealth kill people, she just shoves it straight in the neck. And like her, again, the facial animations and stuff they've got on her, they've done a lot more than they did in the first one with Joel. And you just see like the hatred in her eyes. She just like brings them to the ground. It's amazing. And I have found, so at the point I'm on at the moment, I'm finding I have just an abundance of ammo because I've been stealthing everything. It's not necessarily because it's kind of forced me to. It's more just that I've enjoyed doing it that way. And to be fair, when you do try and engage multiple enemies at once with, just going head on, you normally get your ass kicked.
Yeah, because it's tough.
Yeah.
It is tough, yeah.
Because unlike other shooting games, over-the-shoulder shooting games, the aiming isn't perfectly smooth because she's not that experienced with a gun, I'd imagine. She's probably got some experience, but she's not been like professionally trained or anything. And it becomes very much, if you're going to have to resort to shooting, you're probably not going to come out well. You're going to either have lost loads of ammo or you're going to have lost loads of health, and you could have done it better. But thankfully I've been doing it better so far. What else have they really done gameplay wise? I mean, other than that, it just seems more that the hordes are roughly the same size, like in terms of enemy amounts, but everything seems a bit more intelligent, especially humans.
Yes, yeah, definitely. It's there's a lot more flanking. I mean, it was quite, at the time, I remember the flanking was quite good even then.
Yeah.
They would kind of try and corner you and pin you from both sides, but yeah, in this one it's definitely gone up a notch. And like I said, if you don't do it stealthy, it's very hectic and kind of you're literally just on the spot, kind of pulling things out of the bag if you can, because there's no predictable way the enemies are going to attack you. Like, if they all came from the front, and oh okay, Molotov.
Yeah.
But they really do kind of circle you and go ways that you wouldn't expect. I noticed playing it earlier that they do a lot more looking around. So you can't just sneak up to them.
Oh yeah. They'll turn around a lot more frequently.
And even just glance over their shoulder. And that might not seem like anything, but it immediately gives a warning to you that they will spot you if you continue like that. So, and sometimes they even turn on the spot and walk backwards. So yeah, it's definitely more intelligent AI, and makes for more of a challenge, but it's also very satisfying because it feels like you're actually
bettering these people
and playing a kind of genuine enemy that knows what it's doing. So
yeah, I've been really impressed with the the enemy AI. We'll get onto the co-op AI in a minute. The enemy AI is really good, and I quite like and Naughty Dog made a big deal of this before, that every enemy has a name, and that's quite cool because they will actually call out like orders and stuff to other people in their group. And when you kill one of them, they'll suddenly start going like, "Hey, where are you?" and like calling out for that specific person. And they'll find them, and one of them might be really upset about it or really angry and stuff like that. And it's interesting to see the emotion of the enemies as you kill them, and the motivations for killing them in the game. You I don't know. We'll get onto that a bit more in the spoilers, but yeah, it's a very interesting take on that, on enemies basically, because like you said, Last of Us 1 kind of brought in this idea of really heavy story in games, and then this one's taken it even further, and not only is there a big story that you're within, the story now feels like it's more integrated into the gameplay as well, which is really cool to see basically. We'll touch a bit on we'll touch a bit on presentation after we've gone through co-op AI. So, co-op AI, I still fucking hate it. Like, in Last of Us 1, I personally found that the AI in Last of Us 1 for co-op characters was terrible. There's a bit that I'll always remember that was the first time that the immersion completely got broken. Was in the first one, I think it's one of the first times you meet clickers. You're kind of underground in like it's fairly well lit, but also still quite dark, and you're with Tess and Ellie. And Ellie and Tess were just running around like headless chickens, and I had to stealth everywhere. But they could run up to a zombie, an infected, stand right in front of it. Infected, we just keep walking. That's good that it doesn't, that, you know, they weren't a hindrance to you, because, you know, it would be incredibly annoying if that was the case. But I know Naughty Dog even can do better AI than this, because Uncharted 4 had better AI. And yet it was terrible in the first one. And in the second one, when they were showing all the trailers and like the gameplay stuff they had a couple of weeks ago, they were saying, oh, you know, the AI will be much better at helping you out and doing stuff, you know, like feeling like they're more integrated. And for the first few hours of the game, I agreed with that. And then I hit maybe hour 4 or 5, and I'll put the footage on while we're talking about this now. It's like it suddenly broke and went back to Last of Us 1 scales of AI. There was a bit, unfortunately I didn't get this specific bit on camera, but there was two enemies walking along in front of us. Now I thought if I sneak up and kill the one at the back, she'll run up and kill the one at the front. Snuck up, killed the guy, and I was like, oh cool, she'll get her. And then looked around and she was just stood there doing nothing. And I was like, fucking kill him before he turns around. He inevitably turned around, and because I was lucky enough and quick enough, I shot him in the face. But I was just like, what happened to the intelligent AI where they're meant to react to what you do and then get involved? And I mean, I know older games that can do that without being... I mean, again, Uncharted 4. If you kill someone in Uncharted 4 when you're stealthing and there's someone near them, then if you've got a partner at the time, they will go and kill them. And yet yet Last of Us 2, a newer game, it's supposed to do it, but it doesn't always trigger it, and I don't really know why, because it was like, there was nothing in her way. It's not like she had to go down a set of stairs or anything. It was a flat, open road, easy for her to do it, and she just stood there. I was like, what? And then, yeah, the footage on the screen, that will be on screen now, she just, like, the AI character just kept pushing me out of cover into the line of sight of enemies. I'm like, what are you doing? So, but yeah, I mean, how have you found the co-op AI on this one?
Yeah, I've not had as much problems, but I did encounter that one I told you about earlier, which was just ridiculous. I think the problem is the inconsistency, because, like you said, at the start of the game, kind of when they're sort of tutorialing you through it, you know, you do that classic thing of when they show you the mechanics of the game, you'll kill an enemy. It's two enemies, you'll kill the one on the left.
They'll kill the one on the right.
The co-op AI will kill the guy on the right. And that did continue. And yeah, it's the fact that it doesn't always work. And most of the time I found that it works, but then occasionally it just won't. And that's the problem, because you've become accustomed to it, so you're thinking, well, that's one aspect I don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
But if the AI doesn't do their part, that can affect your
whole plan.
Whole little plan of gameplay. And then, yeah, that bit I was mentioning was I was sneaking down these stairs. This is more immersion because, again, she doesn't trigger them, the AI, but she just ran through a broken window, scattered glass everywhere, and fell on top of me. I was like, well, that's not exactly sneaky. And it just kind of took me out for a moment. But yeah, so, I mean, it's for me, it's been a bit of kind of hit and miss, which is a shame, because I think that's literally so far the only major problem I've picked up on.
Yeah.
And I think it's more annoying because, as we were talking earlier, the enemy AI is so intelligent.
Yeah.
So you'd think that the
co-op would do the same thing.
Would match that. But yeah, it's
just a shame to see, because like I said, Uncharted 4 was, I remember the enemy AI being better than the human AI, co-op AI being better than this. I mean, it isn't as bad as the first one. The first one, it was immersion breaking every 5 minutes, I found. But I expected a bit more in, when did Last of Us 1 come out? 7 years ago?
Yeah, 7
I
years
expected
ago.
More improvement than this, or at least more consistency. Like, if they didn't get involved every single time, then okay, that's what you've gone for.
Yeah.
But if they get involved sometimes, but then you rely on them to do it and they don't do it, that affects the gameplay, and that instantly takes you out of the story, because you're like, okay, that's now, instead of it becoming a really intense story, even when you're playing the gameplay side, it becomes, oh, there's a bug. There's something the game wasn't supposed to do. Yeah. And I know Neil Druckmann, like, he's planned this game out meticulously and everything. By having that, even that tiny bit of immersion breaking, you take me out of it, and it's really annoying, because once I'm back in the immersion, it's fine.
Yeah.
But for those few minutes, just like, oh, really? Like, it's annoying because the rest of the game is so good that something like that, which is really obvious, breaks it so badly. Yeah. But I mean, it might get improved with updates. I mean, I know I have no idea how AI is programmed or anything, but I have seen games that do it better, and I did expect more from a company like Naughty Dog. But again, hopefully that was just a glitch, and a few glitches in places. But it feels like they can improve it. But,
yeah, no, totally agree with that.
So we are about 20 minutes in, so we might as well jump into spoilers now.
Oh.
So spoilers for the first 6 hours to kind of sum it up to anyone that is listening but doesn't want to spoil it for themselves. To describe where we've gotten to, because we literally have finished at the same cutscene now.
Yeah.
It's the first time you see rain in the game, I'm pretty sure, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's rain and there's a theatre. That's the only amount of detail you need to know where we are.
Yeah.
I would say. So let's kick it off then. So, game starts off. You actually play as Joel for a few minutes. I was like, "Hey, you're gonna play as Joel for a bit." Then you play as Ellie for a bit, don't you? After that.
Yep.
And then you play someone called Abby.
Oh dear.
And Abby is the name that I'm pretty sure no child will be called for the next 20,000 years, because she will burn in hell. Yeah. So, the, what is it, 2.5, 3 hours in, the big moment happens. Anyone who's played past that point knows exactly what we're on about. So, you play as Abby, walking through a really bad snowstorm, and Ellie is also off in another area of the city, and it's all going to basically accumulate together. And Abby gets saved by Joel and Tommy out on patrol, and then she leads them back to some mansion they have up in the hills that they've been camping out, that she's camping out with another group called the WLF, which was, what does it stand for again? Can't remember.
Oh, I can't remember. They're referred to as Wolf, aren't they?
Yeah.
But they do have a Washington Liberation Front.
Yeah. Front, that's it.
I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, so then she leads them into the house, and Joel and Tommy say their names, and they all look a bit sort of suspicious. And then all of a sudden, Abby, the character that you kept alive, that Joel kept alive and played as, fucking shotguns Joel in the leg and beats up Tommy. Well, not the person beats up Tommy, and then fucking decides to torture him with a golf club. You then switch back to Ellie and work your way into the mansion. You think, oh, okay, she's going to break in there. Okay, Joel's going to be injured for the rest of the game.
Save the day.
Save the day and all that shit. Nope, it's the bit from the trailer where Ellie's pinned to the ground and you thought they were going to kill off her girlfriend. No, they literally Joel gets beaten to death in like the most brutal, most anger-inducing way that it makes Ellie's incentive?
Yeah. Or motive.
Motive, that's it. Ellie's motive to do the rest of the story, do the rest of the game, becomes yours, because I fucking love Joel. He's like one of my favourite characters. He's played by Troy Baker, who I've even met, who's a really nice guy, and it sets you even more. And when that scene was happening, I literally, when he got shotgun in the leg, I actually shouted out no, like really angrily, which I've never done with a game before. No, I don't think I've done it with film. And then when she does actually kill him, she lifts up the golf club to get the last crack in the head. I went, don't you fucking do it. And then she did it. And now Abby will burn in hell for 1,000 lifetimes.
It's horrifying.
It's horrible. It's so much. I mean, like in the first one when his daughter dies is bad enough. But this one, you have a connection to that character a lot more.
It's a whole game.
Yeah.
It's a whole, it's 15, 20 hours? No, about 15 hours the first game. That's quite a long time to invest, and especially when, like, with him losing his daughter, you and him getting kind of a surrogate daughter in the form of Ellie, and then also the ending of The Last of Us, with the decision he makes and all that, you're kind of like, okay, what he's done is morally grey, but you've accepted that that's that, and they're going to be together, and that aspect of it, that's the constant. That's what I've always thought. Last of Us is one of the most brutal games ever.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But that's always been the thing that's been like, well, at least there's those.
They have those
two, and they've literally just ripped that apart, and it's, I take my hat off. It's a genius move.
It's incredibly brave to take out your biggest actor from the series as well.
And the way they marketed it to kind of send you in a different way.
To make you think it was going to be Ellie's girlfriend, and that she wasn't talking to Joel because she had found out what Joel did, was what I assumed from those trailers. But, of course, that's when a trailer's done its job, when it
Yeah.
misdirects you as to what you think is going to happen.
Yeah.
Bit like the Avengers in Endgame trailers, like they completely told you nothing. But this goes a step further by telling you lies. I love trailers that lie to you.
Yes.
I mean, there's a good example of it. Have you seen the film Passengers? With Chris Pratt.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
The trailers made out that was going to be more of a slightly funny sci-fi thing, and that, you know, they both woke up together, sort of thing. But spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen that film. It's actually Chris Pratt kind of loses his mind and releases her from like this time from the hibernation thing, and that's why I really enjoyed that film, because the trailers lied to me. And this is the entire marketing campaign was a lie, and I was like, that's so good.
Very clever the way it was done, and it's I think, like you were saying earlier about the motion capture and the facial expressions, that makes it so much worse.
Yeah,
because there was the investment in the first one, but it's gone up a notch because you've got the facial expressions even clearer, and the graphic upgrade, and it's just when Ellie's helpless and it just focuses on her face,
the desperation in her face. So I was just like,
yeah,
because her animation was so good, I felt the same way. I was just like, no. And when she's telling Joel to get up, and you just look in his face and you know he's not going to get up, but you're just desperately hoping he somehow will, or Tommy will wake up or something. And then it just doesn't happen. It's just so, it's so brutal. I've never cried at a film. I've never cried at a game or anything, but that brought me fucking close.
Yeah.
Like, I was proper like, how could you kill Joel off? Like, ugh.
I mean, that's what Druckmann and the team are so good at doing. I mean,
Yeah.
the first Last of Us, that twist ending,
Yeah.
it wasn't as much as that, but that was the first game I played where I really felt emotionally impacted. I think the only other game was Last Guardian. That ending really did kind of get to me, but I think I played Last of Us first. I have a feeling. So yeah, I played Last of Us first, and that spoke to me like a film. You know, but that's the level of writing, the level of kind of cinematic quality that those games have. I really, you really do feel that. It's, you know,
that anger and emotion and everything to it.
Yeah.
And then the fact that, I'm not sure if you felt this, but for the rest of the game, there's been a constant level of anger and somberness as well. With the first one, when Joel's daughter dies, yes, it is very shocking and still very upsetting, but because you can see it's upsetting because Joel is so upset, because you can see how much he went through to save her, and then for her to die anyway. Whereas this one, it's an emotion to you because you had a connection to that character in the first one. And yeah, like you said, that constant of those two being together, you thought that was going to stay there.
It's also a very clever twist in the fact that I always thought, kind of from the end of Last of Us and the start of this game, there's a scene at the start where Joel comes to visit Ellie, and she's doing homework, and it's right near the start of the game, and he's kind of awkwardly talking to her, and she's kind of a bit like, I've got stuff to get on with.
Yeah.
And that scene kind of spoke to me in the respect of, it was like, well, he's actually the dependent one.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of came across to me from the first game, that he was kind of really gruff and kind of dismissive with her, because obviously he didn't want her to be where his daughter was. But then he is reliant upon her, and he's actually the vulnerable one. That's what's really clever about it. I always felt that he was the vulnerable one, and he depended on her. So to have that twisted on its head, and to be like, well, actually, no, now she's the vulnerable one, and particularly Ellie's character, because Ellie's character, if you've played the expansion, the DLC, she's already had, not a great time of it as well.
She's already had a life before she met Joel, sort of thing.
And she's had loss and grief, so it's very clever how they've turned that whole dynamic on its head as well.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean that's just. I mean, I know it's a very big aspect of the story, but there's multiple others. Like going into sort of more deeper levels of the story after that. I was when on all the trailers they seem to heavily focus on her relationship with Dina. I was like, okay, that's that's cool and everything. I just felt like they were overdoing it in the trailers, and that it was like that was going to actually not be that big of a deal. Maybe they were doing this for kind of like the attention or something, but thankfully it wasn't. It's the complete opposite. Their relationship is actually really interesting to watch. I mean, seeing how a relationship of any orientation would happen in a post-apocalyptic world, sort of thing, would be interesting. But it's interesting as well because she's lost Joel and everything. Any male presence from the first one is completely gone, and it's instead just Dina and Ellie. I think that's a very unique story to go for because it's never been done before. I mean, I suppose the next closest sort of like female in focused story is the new Tomb Raider games.
Yeah.
But that's obviously very different. And I was just happy to see that because, like I said, I was worried it was just going to be kind of a gimmick, but it's completely not, and that's great to see.
Yeah,
They've gone for that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think near the start of the game, because it's more focused on Ellie and Joel for a bit, you don't really know Dina that well, and she's kind of she is there and she has a character, but she's kind of in the background. But she's brought more and more into it as you kind of progress through the game. And kind of the point we're both at, I think she's become a really interesting character.
Yeah.
And their dynamics become very interesting. And so, yeah, I think they've developed that really well. It's Naughty Dog have always been good at doing those kind of duo dynamics.
Not necessarily the AI of the dual company.
Yeah, no, the gameplay AI is a whole other matter, but the story dynamic definitely. I mean, you just look at the Nathan and Sam Drake as a good example.
That's very good.
They really are good at doing that sort of thing. So it's nice to see them again replicate it, but as you say, do it in a totally different way.
Yeah, and it's good to see. Like, I mean, I can't think of a single other franchise that has a lesbian couple as the main two characters.
I can't either.
I can't think of a film that does that. To be honest, it probably is, but I can't think of one.
I can't think off the top of my head, but games, I don't think so.
Yeah, so it's very
Life is Strange, maybe.
I've not played those, but
yeah, I would.
fair enough.
That's probably the other example.
But it's very. It feels like it's progressing the story in a really good way, and it'll be interesting to see what comes beyond The Last of Us 2 from other companies as well.
Yes.
Which should be really good to see. But rest of the story wise, I mean, the next. So, like I said, we're about I'd say absolute max, we're about 8 hours in. There isn't that much story. You obviously have the big chunk of Joel dies, then it's Ellie decides she's going to go after the, Washington Liberation Front, and then it's more gameplay, it's more them travelling. There's lots of like little character building moments, like where they're talking and stuff like that throughout their journey through Seattle, because that's where they go next. They come into, we didn't really discuss this in the gameplay stuff, but when they're in Seattle, it's a big open area that you can explore for ages. Yeah. There's loads of little cool things in there, like the guitar shop and I think this is a little bit earlier on, but the PS3 with Uncharted 2 next to it is really cool.
Yeah.
And the ring in the bank, Sig Par, I can't pronounce it.
It's Drake's ring, isn't it?
Sic Pargnus Magna?
Par Magnus or something like that.
Which it makes me go, so this is set in the world of Uncharted, but there's a game of Uncharted. So is Nathan Drake really famous and he's made games?
My brain is leaking out of my ear. Yeah.
But I am glad that they didn't put a PS3 in every household, because no offense, but not everyone had a PS3. Not in that generation. But
yeah, you've done your Sony promotion, Naughty Dog. You don't have to do it anymore. It's fine.
Obligated Sony promotion.
Done. Yeah. The other thing with the free roaming aspect, actually, that you mentioned in Seattle, is a really nice feature. Is in Uncharted Lost Legacy, you had that section where
Oh,
Chloe had the map, and then it would have question marks, and then you go to the question marks, and it would tick them off. And just having that little feature is really cool because you explore the areas, and then it kind of tells you when you're near.
Yeah.
So then you can go in, but then when you've done it, it takes you off. So you don't end up trawling around the same area again and again. You've got a kind of clarification that you've done it. And at the same time, the areas are really good in terms of exploration. It's one of those things where they haven't gone overboard, because I feel if they went too free roaming, it would lose that narrative pace.
It would detract from it, definitely.
Detract from the story. And some games are built for it, but something like The Last of Us, you need to keep that narrative momentum going.
Yeah.
So it's got just enough exploration to, have a bit more time, and also get these little kind of like snippets of backstory through the letters and stuff, and then you can kind of find out other little cool kind of world building stuff. But then kind of when you've had a suitable walk around, it pulls you back into the main action and drama,
and it's always kind of reminding you that it's there. Like you were saying with the little world building stuff with the letters. The Last of Us is the only game where I've ever bothered reading letters like that, because there's so many games that just throw crap after crap at you to read, and I enjoy reading, but when I'm playing a game, especially when it's a game that doesn't suit sitting there and reading for a few minutes, it just gets annoying. Whereas Last of Us, the stories are actually interesting. The letter isn't just randomly plonked in the middle of nowhere. There's normally something around it that tells the story as well. Like in the bank with the guy with the shotgun, and there's a letter saying what he went through before he killed himself. That's really interesting, I think, and that's why I want to read them. And yeah, Seattle really had that in droves, and it was really well done. And then you come to my favourite bit of Seattle was the music shop. So when you come in and I wandered around the shop, there's loads of little references to different bands and everything. It was Pearl Jam,
Pearl Jam?
something? Yeah.
And then, a screenshot of that.
And then you come into the room with the guitar, and you'd already played the guitar a little bit earlier in the game, but it's the first time that the damn touchpad on the PS4 has ever actually been used for something good.
Yeah.
You can basically get a fully functional guitar with each individual string playable with, depending on where you strum on the touchpad. I did try to play the Super Mario theme on it, but I don't know how to play normal guitar, and I don't understand notes very well, so it wasn't going to go very well. But yeah, all of that stuff, it's world building and adds a little bit of character to the game rather than it just being bleak story after bleak story, obviously a good way, but yeah, it's very nice to see, and I feel that they've taken what they did in the first one a step further.
Yeah.
Actually, funnily enough, it kind of reminds me of, I remember in A Way Out.
Yes.
Yeah. So co-op game by Hazelight Studios, where there's lots of little objects around that you can play, like the guitar and the piano and stuff. Kind of reminds me of that a bit. That's probably where they got it from the first one. But
yeah,
it's a cool thing to see done on such a professional level.
I noticed in this one as well, I think in the first one it was a bit more limited. There was only specific doors you could open.
Yeah. In
this one, there's a lot of doors you can open.
Yeah.
And the ones that you can't, they've actually bothered to kind of make the undergrowth so high, or there's a big
really going to open it.
Plank. There's no way. And actually, in some of those cases, you can actually get around another way. There's like little puzzle solving bits, which it's just like, oh, okay, if I smash through this skylight window and kind of crawl through, I can get to this area and get some supplies and upgrade my weapons. And it's little touches like that that are really nice. It feels more. There's a lot more freedom to go places, and it's clever because they did it in Lost Legacy, where they designed the map where it does have a kind of natural meeting point.
Yeah.
But it's big enough to feel like
you got areas to go.
That you're just free roaming, but it does very carefully start to guide you, but only after you've kind of explored enough.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like you're just wandering aimlessly. There are some open world games that are just too vast.
Yeah.
And there's just nothing in them, which I kind of get a bit bored of, because you're just like wandering, and then you end up going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
This either the land will descend in a certain way, so you know that's the way to go,
or it'll kind of corner you off in a way that you can't go out of where you should be going.
Yeah, definitely. So, and the actual environments themselves feel like the natural progression from 4 years. It is 4 years, isn't it? So everything does look that little bit more overgrown and wrecked, and kind of crumbly. And
which is convenient, so you can go prone now.
Yeah.
Because imagine if the grass didn't grow, what would they have done?
Just lying on the floor.
Yeah.
Don't mind me.
But it's there's a lot of little tweaks that they've made, and like the weapons and everything, they haven't really changed, but they're tweaked slightly to feel better, and just awesome. But one more bit of story spoiler now to talk about where we have both gone to. If I don't die in the meantime. So yeah, we're both roughly 8 hours in, and as I said, it's the first time that I think of where the game actually starts raining, and then there's a theatre. So Ellie and Dina are basically going through Subway.
Yeah.
So going through not the sandwich shop, the actual where trains appear. Then basically big horde chases after them. They escape and they end up in this theatre. But Dina's acting particularly worn out, considering Ellie seems pretty much fine. But then Dina gives the big reveal of
she's pregnant.
Oh shit!
Yes.
Getting some real world shit in there.
Yeah.
So although Dina is dating Ellie now, before she was dating, what was that guy's name? Can't remember his name.
Oh, that's terrible. How have we forgotten his name?
I know, he was only in it for like an hour. So I mean, he's still alive, but so she was dating someone else, and now she's saying she's pregnant, and Ellie's pissed at her because, well, why did you come knowing that you were pregnant? So yes, which is agreeable. I mean, I know she obviously cares a lot for Ellie, but at the same time, this is probably the worst possible situation she could put them in.
Yeah, and this is what Naughty Dog do best. I mean, that is like the ending of The Last of Us. I mean, Joel makes a choice, an emotional reaction. I mean, Joel's pretty sensible through the whole first game.
Yeah.
He's, deliberately cold, and he will just, dispatch of people. He's cutthroat, he's a survivalist, which makes sense because of all the stuff that's happened to him. And he's hardened to it. Until the end, where he makes a knee-jerk emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Which is also selfish. It is for him over the fate of possibly civilization.
Yeah.
And again, it's the same thing with Dina. She cares so much for Ellie. She doesn't want to see her go by herself.
Yeah.
She'd be worried about her. But ironically, it's
caused her more problems.
But that is what they've got, the dilemma of the human being, which some other games don't quite have, that three-dimensionalness. That the actual real contradiction, I would say, of a human being.
Yeah.
So the point where the logical becomes the emotional.
Yeah.
So.
It's very interesting to see, because again, I can't think of a game that's done it to this scale, where it feels like I'm watching a TV series, but I'm interacting with it in a game way, obviously. And I mean, I didn't see that coming at all. Like,
no,
especially the fact she's with Ellie now. You kind of forget that she was with a guy before. So,
and I think with Joel's, I did work it out just before.
Oh, that he was gonna die.
I think
when he got shotgunned in the leg, I was like, "Oh, don't you fucking do it!" I knew that it was coming. I just didn't want to accept it. And
they don't make games where the character's riding on the shining horse to save the day.
Yeah.
So kind of when you're going down to, you're in the house and you're walking down to where it's happening. At that point, I pretty much should figured out that was going to happen. But with this, it does sideline you. It just totally comes out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I actually, when I watched you play it, there is a clue where she froze up at the body.
Oh,
so it's probably morning sickness.
That's true.
So, but you don't cotton on because cleverly, obviously, it's a zombie. So it's an infected. So
it's understandable to react that way.
But then you play again, you think, well, no, she's seen them before.
Yeah, in fact, you saw horses earlier on in the game, I think.
And it didn't bother her. So, it's little things like that.
It's a good little touch.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? It's crazy that a company that originally made Crash Bandicoot now makes you fucking want to kill a. I mean, like, I'm not sure about you, but every time I kill one of the enemies from the Washington Liberation Front, I'm satisfied. I'm that little bit more satisfied. I've made the world a better place.
It's the Punisher equation, isn't it? I think because that scene is so affecting. I think that's part of the thing I noticed when I watched the trailers and the gameplay. I thought, that is really brutal violence.
Yeah.
Am I going to be okay with that? You know, I like fighty games, but I don't revel in someone getting their throat cut. But after you experience that, I wouldn't say I enjoy it, but it doesn't bother me.
No.
I kind of, if I dispatch with someone, I'm like, well, there's another one gone.
I mean, when Joel gets killed and it's such a brutal death, it makes you so angry. Like I said, you get the motivations that Ellie has. And yeah, every time I kill an enemy, I'm not going to lie, I'm just like, good, there's another one gone. Just a few more. I just got to keep going until I get Abby.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, anyone who has played this game will never be able to have a child and call them Abby. If they already have a child called Abby, they're a little bit dead inside now.
One batch, two batch, penny and a dime.
But that's pretty much it. There is one thing I want to mention. What was the videotape called that you found in the weed bit of the house, the Crash Bandicoot porno?
Oh my god. Oh,
I was just like, what?
I can't remember.
I whatever it was, I'm sure I can find a clip of it somewhere.
It's like Splash
Thrash Bandicoot or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, whatever
it was a play on words. It was, oh god, it was something else.
I do love a company that can take the piss out of itself. It's always good. But yeah, like putting a porno version of your own game, and you know now that name exists. There is a group of people somewhere making that video.
Oh god, next level.
Unless that's what the new Crash Bandicoot 4 is going to be. Maybe that's what it is. Imagine if they did that. Christ.
Oh dear. In VR.
In VR, God. Oh god. Anyway, I think that's enough. So
moving on.
Yeah.
On that note.
The thing is, maybe in 10 years they'll do another game and there'll be a porno version of The Last of Us. That'd be concerning.
That would be concerning. Very concerning.
What would you could also have like Uncharted porno? What would Nathan Drake's porno name be?
Nathan Snake? No, that's rubbish.
We'll come up with some ideas and come back next week. So cool. The next one, I mean, obviously we talked gameplay and everything this time. The next one will probably be a bit shorter because that'll pretty much just be story. Game's meant to be about 20 to 30 hours, and we're both exploring a lot, so I think it'll take about that. Yeah. So probably a couple more podcasts of these, but they'll be shorter ones, and then go from there, really. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. I've been Phil. This has been
Dashby.
And Blink's here as well, the cat. But he's been very
hello,
quiet.
Blink. We got a little chirp.
We got a chirp. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and have a good day. Bye.
Goodbye.
And it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.